For more on the increasing ties between China and the African countries, I talked earlier to Hank Cohen. He's a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. He said the anniversary is a major event for some in China.
Well, there's a lot of African embassies there, so they're all giving parties, and then the Chinese government is fully cooperating with them. And there are quite a few African students at Chinese universities, so it's quite a lively affair.
It's interesting. I was reading a piece about a Chinese businessman who moved to Ghana in 1995, and he said, when I got there, there were about 100 Chinese people. Today, it's more like 20,000 or 30. That kind of arc, isn't it? I mean, over the last 25 years. So talk to me about, the economic development, trade development, Chinese going to Africa, Africans going to China. I mean, this kind of exchange that we've seen.
Well, I think over the last 20 years, Chinese have greatly enlarged their presence. They have investors doing mining, oil and gas, manufacturing, and then you have Chinese business people selling things like electronics and heavy machinery and that sort of thing. So they open agencies. And even bigger are the Chinese government-sponsored infrastructure programs. They hire Chinese companies to build roads, airports, dams, and that brings thousands of Chinese workers. And one interesting phenomenon is that many Chinese workers in these companies stay behind, and they open up retail. So you can go to the smallest village in Africa, you'll find Chinese retail people.
How do you see the relationship continuing to grow over the next few years?
There's a certain amount of resentment on this business of Chinese staying behind, doing retail, because this prevents the Africans from doing it. And also they tend to buy Chinese goods, which interferes with African production of their own stuff. So there's a certain amount of resentment developing. But in general, I think the Chinese are really contributing to the growth of the economies.
And you mentioned the word resentment, and that brings to mind Rex Tillerson, the former Secretary of State, when he was traveling around the continent. It seemed to express some annoyance with this relationship between China and the African continent. Where does the U.S. fall into all of this, and has it created an interesting dynamic between these two countries?
The one thing that bothers people are the financial side, because whereas we give grants for our development projects, the World Bank gives grants to Europeans, the Chinese give loans. And so they'll come and say, okay, we're going to build a road from point A to point B, and we'll lend you the money, and you'll pay us back at concessional rates. Well, slowly but surely, African debt is building, 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 and that's not healthy. So that's what Rex Tillerson was worried about.